the idea that Israel's legal foundation dates not from the partition resolution, but from the San Remo resolution. I was the first to write on this subject. I started my research by getting out of the British archives the San Remo resolution, the minutes of the San Remo conference, both in English and in French. I'm from Montreal, so I know how to read French because there were English version and French versions, and that's where I formulated my thesis on sovereignty. Now, to approach the question, we should first start with the fact that the land of Palestine, as well as most of the Middle East, was under Turkish sovereignty since 1516, 1517, when the Emperor Selim I soundly defeated the Egyptian sovereign and took over the entire Middle East, most of the Arabian Peninsula too. So we come down to the war, First World War. Turkey joined the Central Powers, Germany, Austria, Hungary, Bulgaria, and it was then that the British began to formulate plans to make Palestine into the Jewish national home. This idea was floating around, of course, since 1897. It was already a hot question in 1911 when a book was written on that very subject. Now, Turkey decisively lost World War I. Thank you. Turkey, it was not only it was the Ottoman Empire. It was called formerly the Ottoman Empire, and when the British, principally the British, conquered the area, they not only occupied the area of the Ottoman Empire, they subjugated it. There's a difference between occupation and subjugation. Occupation, the territory still remains under the sovereignty of the state which is occupied. But when the territory is subjugated, that state loses its sovereignty. And this is what happened to Ottoman Turkey, to the Ottoman Empire. Now the question then remains, to whom was sovereignty transferred? Well, there could only be one answer. The answer actually is already furnished in the Treaty of Versailles. People don't read carefully its provisions. The group that defeated the Ottoman Empire was not only Britain, it was a collection of countries called the Principal Allied Powers, consisting of Britain, France, Italy, and Japan. And sovereignty was passed over to them. And they were then had the capacity to distribute the lands of the Middle East to whomever they wanted. And that is how Palestine was transferred over to the Jewish people. Now, when I say Palestine, I don't mean half of Palestine, a third of Palestine, a quarter. It was all of Palestine. There was to be no partition. This was foreign to the whole object of what was decided in 1920. Actually, I skipped something. You have to start with the 1919 Paris Peace Conference, when it was decided that sovereignty would not revert back to Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire collapsed and was destroyed. And that's when sovereignty was placed in the hands of the Principal Allied Powers. Then they met a year later at San Remo, Italy, and they decided to distribute the lands that formerly belonged to the Ottoman Empire. That is said specifically in the Treaty of Versailles and in the Covenant of the League of Nations, which is part of the Treaty of Versailles. And I'm only dealing here with Palestine, but the same applies to Mesopotamia, which became Iraq, and Syria. Now, a previous speaker here said tonight there was a sovereignty vacuum. This is nonsense. There was never any sovereignty vacuum. I just said that the whole of Palestine, not a fraction thereof, was given over to the Jewish people to become the Jewish national home. There was to be no partition. Now, this is the foundation document, the San Remo Resolution, which I dug out of the British archives in the mid-'80s. I wrote from Montreal and they sent it to me. Simple as that. I mean, they sent me all the archival material that I requested, including the minutes, the all-important minutes of the San Remo Peace Conference, which was attended by the British Prime Minister, Foreign Minister, and Prime Ministers of Italy and France, and the Ambassador of Japan. Now, to whom was sovereignty given? There was no Jewish state at that time, no Israel. Sovereignty was given to the Jewish people, and the Jewish people were represented by the Zionist organization. That's to whom sovereignty was given. Now, how did sovereignty manifest itself, come about? Well, there are two documents here that we're talking about. We're talking about Article 22 of the Covenant of the League of Nations, specifically paragraph 1, which sets up the idea of self-determination of peoples inhabiting the lands formerly belonging to the Turkish Empire. Now, in the case of Syria and Mesopotamia, sovereignty passed over, de jure sovereignty that is, passed over to the local inhabitants. But in the case of Palestine, sovereignty did not pass to the local inhabitants. Palestine was what we call a sui generis. It was a unique case, one of a kind. It passed over to the Jewish people represented by the Zionist organization, or to world Jewry. And that was the condition all during the mandate period. But during the mandate period, the Jews did not exercise sovereignty. Sovereignty was exercised, the attributes of sovereignty was exercised by the British mandatory power. And we all know what happened. They sabotaged the bloody mandate. And they did bring into force the independent Jewish state, which was their task. They never did it. Now we come to 1948. I must say also that sovereignty was not vested in the hands of Great Britain. Article 1 of the mandate makes that clear. It says that Britain has powers of legislation and administration, save as they may be limited by the mandate. And they had to submit an annual report to the Council of the League of Nations as saying how they complied with the mandate. Neither did the League of Nations have any sovereignty. They were only the supervisor of the mandatory powers to see that they complied with the terms of the mandate. So what we have then is neither Britain nor the League of Nations nor its successor, the United Nations, never had the right to give away any part of the land of Israel to any other entity. Okay. Now in 1948, the Jewish Agency for Palestine prepared for the state of Israel. So that's how sovereignty was devolved to the state of Israel. The state of Israel is included in the term Jewish people. And so sovereignty was devolved or vested in the state of Israel theoretically over the entire land of Israel. But unfortunately, the UN General Assembly, as I just said, tried to give away up to 40% of the land of Western Palestine that they had no right to do so. When they did that, they were in absolute violation of two provisions of international law. Article 5 of the Mandate, which was still in force, prohibited partition, and Article 80 of the UN Charter did the same thing. It preserved the rights of the Jewish people. Unfortunately, today, the United Nations doesn't even recognize that it is prohibited from giving up rights of the Jewish people under Article 80, which protects those rights. Now, in 1967, unfortunately, a monumental error and a monumental violation of law was committed by Mayor Shamgar, who was the military advocate general and who became the president of the Supreme Court. He advised the Eshkol National Unity Government to apply the laws of belligerent occupation, i.e. international law, to Judea and Samaria and to the rest of the liberated territories. This is the origin of the occupation myth, because if you apply occupation rules, then everyone believes that it's occupied territories. So we shot ourselves in the foot, thanks to the advice of Mayor Shamgar. I communicated with him. He refused to say that he knew about the existence of the Ben-Gurion precedent, which was the Land of Israel Proclamation, which required any part of the Land of Israel conquered by the IDF to automatically become part of the state by applying the law, jurisdiction, and administration of the state to that area. So we shot ourselves in the foot. Unfortunately, Mayor Shamgar has never admitted what the great mistake he made. Okay. Now we have to apply our sovereignty to all the land under our de facto control. We have the Uri sovereignty, but we have already given up about 38% to the criminal terrorist organization known as the PLO, Palestine, and its offshoot, the Palestinian Authority. My advice: get rid of these bodies, throw them out of the state, and apply our sovereignty to all areas of the Land of Israel that are under